Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to build a clean, modern and fully responsive interior deco website. So we are going to build this website session by session, starting from the navigation bar, then we'll move to the home section to complete with the contact form. So now let's see how this is done. So to begin, we first have to create a folder, and then so this is how we create the folder. You go to this, then you create your folder, then after that you select that folder. Now when you are in the folder, you have to give it a name, a better name than this. So when you're in the folder, you create your first file, which is the HTML file. So let's name it index.html. Then we'll create our image folder, and then we'll create the style folder so that we'll keep our style in there. So when you are done, everything is supposed to look something like this. So now, starting with the setup and then the navigation. So when you start, you first have to call the HTML file, which is using the doc type HTML. So let's do that. So yes, so here is it. So right now that we've gotten our startup, let's start with the files. Okay, so now let's start with the navigation section. So the navigation section, which is this session. So let's design that. You can stop the video and then check the codes and then this all those stuff. So as you can see, the navigation has been placed inside, which has a list here, so that everything will be in order. So if you have to check this, it will look something like this at the moment, but we will later design it with our CSS and then see how it would look. So now that we are done designing our nav bar, let's move to our home session, which is normally called the hue, this session. Okay, so let's see how that is also done. So this is our home session. The home session, we inserted an image and then placed the other stuff into this container called home container. So if you are to check our website, this is how it's looking for now. Yes. So what is next? Our about section, do that also. Now this is the about section. As you saw, it doesn't contain much, so would over here we used the H tag to get the bigger section. We use the P tag to get the other smaller text that are in it. And then as you can also see, with each section I give it an ID so that I can label it back to the A tag here and inside the href. So when you are done with that, then you can link so that when you press here, you'll be able to access all the stuff that are here. So since we are done with our about, and then it's now looking like this, let's move on to the next thing, which is shop. So yes, this is shops. So as you can see, I still placed this inside a div to make it a container, so that if we are styling it later, it will be easier for us to style and then it will be faster. So over here this is how the shop session looks like. Let's go there. So it looks something like this, and then you're trying to achieve this, but you'll be able to achieve this with only the HTML. So you would have to add CSS. So we are creating a container for every session. Do you understand? Yes, we are creating a container for every session so that we would find it easy to style or design when we are using our CSS later. So as you can see, they were all placed into a div, and then this div is over here, and then the div with a class product, or that you can, as I said earlier on, you can pause the video and then check through the codes. Now let's from the website, our next thing to do is the contact. So let's do that. So this is our contact session. So now we are done with our navigation session. So looking on this web page, the next thing you can see is the footer here, which has the home, the about, and then the copyright and all those necessary information. So let's do that one also. Yes, and this is our footer. So the footer here was also placed in a UL tag, which would list the items, but would edit it or style it with the CSS later, and then would be able. If you come into the session we place the images, you realize that since the files are not all in the same folder, and then the HTML is in this folder, and then the images are in this folder, so we cannot just access it straight. So to do that, you can either do the absolute one, which would go back to the root path and then bring everything back, or you do it this way depending on your file direction. So when we are done, would come to the HTML head and then link our CSS file to it, so that anything we do in the CSS file would affect this HTML. So since we are done with this, let's move to our CSS. Now with our CSS file, as you can see, we are starting with the body. So the body here has been given a padding of 0 and then a margin of 0. So let's see what that does. So it makes everything here shift to the corner, and then this also shifts to the corner. So there is no margin or padding at any side. It kind of resets everything to 0, 0. Then our next thing is styling the navigation bar. So with the navigation bar, the way it was given classes here, so the bigger nav bar, which is this place, so we give it height, a width, a background, and then position. So the position here is going to make it stay at where it is, and then the background, as you can see here, is going to give it a white background. So any color that we put here would be the background for it. Now for the box shadow gives it something like a shade. Yes, so we get a shade from here, and then this is the styling to style our navigation list, which we did over here. So this would style it, and then over here, as you can see, we've given it display flex, justify content left, and then align item center. So the display flex is going to align or rearrange this. this in this order, but as you can also see here, we place flex the direction at column, so the column is going to make it horizontal instead of vertical. And then the justify content left here is what is going to push all this to the left side of the web page. And then the align item center that you can see here is what is making everything here stay in the center of the nav bar. So now let's move to our next styling, which is the home. So with the home, it's supposed to look very nice. So we start by calling the big section, which is home here, as an ID. So now if you give an attribute and then it's a class, we use the full stop. But if it's an ID, we use the hash. So since it's an ID, we are using the hash here. And then the nav bar, since the nav bar is at the left section, we are going to and then the weight of it was 250 px over here. We are going to give this a margin left, which would shift the home, everything in the home from the left 250 px. So this is as designing the image, positioning the image wall so that it will fit what we want to do, and then using the right classes and then the IDs we design. So now the index here is there to make the home container, which is this part. This part is there to make this part sit on this, because normally if you are to leave it that way, this part wouldn't show since it has to sit on something else. So the Z index is going to help it sit on it. So the higher the number, the higher the items that it gets to sit on. So let's move to our next style, which is the about. Here is the about. So with our about, you consider we used display flex again, and about over here we used space between. So as the name suggests, the space between is going to provide a space in between the two items. So you have space between, allowing this section to be here and then this to also be here. That is the function of the justify content space between. And then, as I said, the align items is going to center everything over here, and then we style our image and then the other information on it. Let's move to the next style, which is shop. So with the shop, as you can see, we have something here called font family. So the font family works more like the font in Word. Yes, so if you're familiar with the fonts in Word, you would be able to do this. So the font family here, and then the font size is what determines the size of the font also. The border radius here gives so the as the name goes, radius, so it's going to give it this curve that we can see here. So if the border radius were not here, you would have seen this to be a straight something. Yeah. And then the Z index has been used here also again. So now the dot product card over here. So the dot product card is over here. So the hover here is meaning if we are to hover or move our mouse around it, it should do something. So here we said it should transform, so it should move from where its original point, and then it should move -5 pixel. So that is what it's going to do. Now let's move to our next, which is the contact. The contact tool still moves to the same thing. So when designing, you have to break it into sessions so that your codes will be very effective. Like when next time you want to use it, you'd be able to just pick it straight and then use without worrying or having to type much. So let's say I have to create something that looks similar to that. I'll just come here, copy it since it is in sessions. So I'll just copy the about, copy the styles for the about, and then I'm good to go. So it is advisable to be putting your stuff inside groups to make it easy for you to work with. And now we are at the footer. So with the footer, which is what you is the copyright, the home, and then all those stuff. So with that, the styling is very simple. You just have to shift it to the down and then play around it. There are plenty stuff. If you don't understand something, you can Google it and then you would get a feedback. Now the media here is there to make the whole website very reactive. So it's going to make it responsive so that when it goes onto a different device, it will be able to move properly and then move well. So this is our total website that we developed today. Thanks for watching.